The media has been docile, yes. Why would the media not be docile? Are they not humans? Most media houses are owned by private investors now. And if you watch television, when there are certain comments being made, you see they will be warning the people. Please, such comments are not allowed here, because... So, if you... of course, they remember, is it Khashoggi? What's the name of... Khashoggi. And you also see a lot of fake news in America, fake news, and so on. So they know what is happening, how journalists are being treated. Now, is there any insurance for journalists? Is there any insurance for those who are working in journalism? I don't think they don't have any insurance. They just kill like Khashoggi. I don't know how many of you watched the killing of Khashoggi. It's very frightening. I've watched it. It's frightening. So the media people, they are humans like you. So in a system that cannot guarantee your safety, where you can just be butchered just like that. So people are a bit, very, very conscious. They are humans after all. So that is why they are docile. But if you are very bold, please go ahead and be very bold. The other point is the FX, the exchange rate. Muda talked about market failure. Of course, we also have government failure. Market failure, government failure. It's issue of politics. It's political. Nigeria is not a producing nation. We don't produce anything. Let me qualify it. We produce a toothpick. We produce toothpick. So when you allow your exchange rate to just fly anyhow, just leave it, just fly, and you import virtually anything, do you know what that is going to mean for your country? So the political equation and balancing is there. That is why they keep on defending. You are defending. It's a managed exchange rate. And they will keep on defending because you look at the nature of politics in this country. If you are in their shoes, you will do also the same thing. If you want to allow it to fly like that of Zimbabwe or that of any other country, where you have to carry a bag load of currency to get $1, that's what it is going to be. Of course, people can give an instance that, you saw what happened in the telecommunications sector. It's not the same thing as telecommunications. Everything in your country is tied to this exchange rate because you are not a producing nation. You import virtually everything. So what will be the implication? That's my thought. The final one is the most likely and the likely. We should even go to the level of what is called stress testing. We should not just stop at outlook or forecasting and so on. Stress testing is where you are looking at improbables. So you are able to stretch your creativity and imagination to that level where you now begin to talk of unks, unknown unknowns. Because there are so many unknowns in this country. The ones we can see is election. There are so many unknowns. So when we embark on stress testing the macroeconomy, then we'll be able to come up with results that are very close to the results. And I think that is my final point. Thank you very much.
Well, let me make my own few comments. I just want to begin by saying that on the question of the ASU strike, I think the ASU strike, if we recall, has been going on since 2009. So it's actually old. What it reflects is that we have a nation which has no strategy or concern for its own development. Everybody knows that education is at the center of takeoff, and higher education in particular is responsible for advancing countries in the digital age. If you have a government that continuously plays around with the university sector, or even any sector, education, it just shows that it is not really interested in Nigeria's forward motion. So everything else we talk about capacity stems from the fact that we abandoned self-development since 1986. Everything we are doing now is just patchwork, ad hoc activity, and irresponsible activities. Secondly, let me talk about the question of the budget. I have the contributor who talked about a number of issues regarding the budget. I have some issues with the way he conceives some things. When you describe Nigerian media as docile, I have a fundamental problem with that. I think we have this tendency in Nigeria to describe our people and our media as docile. I think it's a very dangerous thing we're doing. whether we like it or not, Nigeria has one of the most vigorous medias in the world. It may not do what you want it to do, but this media began this vigor from 1898 with Herbert Macaulay and co. They are just carriers on of a vigorous tradition. Now, what they do today is different because our media is less diverse in terms of ideas. That is true. But docility, as we apply to our media and ourselves, is a dangerous misperception. I see that kind of perception as belonging to the pathological Nigerian narrative, where we say everything is wrong with us. Everything is wrong with us. And yet, these are actually misdescriptions of our people. If you go to any society, there are certain things our media do in this country that the allegedly free US media cannot do. I know that we believe in the dogma that the US has a freest press. We believe that as an article of faith. But the vigor of Nigerian media is a different matter. So if there's no reason why Nigerian media practitioners should become Khashoggi. Nigeria is not Saudi Arabia. The assumption, in fact, that we're probably Saudi Arabia and will do that is a problem in itself. It's always a put down. We're always putting ourselves down. I have a problem with that. I'm an advocate of what I call the affirmative Nigerian narrative, and I've written about that. This question of PPP, again, these have become like dogmas since World Bank IMF intervention. Two things I need to say about this. First is that it is government responsibility anywhere in the world to develop the society. It is government responsibility to create the environment for development. So we cannot tell the government, we can't say government cannot do this, it cannot do that. That is why they run away from doing things. It is their business. We lived in this country when government built general hospitals all over Nigeria. We lived here. So to say government cannot do this, who should do it? What should they do with the money? What should they do with it? Now, as for PPP, I think the example of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway is not right. That road was given to Babalaki, and he pretended to have capacity, and for 2.5 to 3 years, he did nothing. He did nothing. So PPP by itself is not a solution. We make a fetish of the private sector. The private sector is not a bottleneck bit of money. They are there to make profit, and they don't invest, as Muda said, you won't build a hospital in parts of Lagos. But citizens are not commodities. You can't reduce everything to profit. We can't do that. Citizens are over and above commodities, but it appears to me as if the more we think in Nigeria, the more we are going towards a model in which we are perceived as exchangeable commodities. So governments, private people charge fees that are atrociously high and make life difficult for our citizens. I don't think that we should create a model that works for us, that is sensible, that combines public sector responsibility for our people. No private sector is responsible for our people. The government that's responsible must insist on that. In the country where I live, all primary and high school is undertaken by government. What I don't understand is why Nigerian elites and economists and so on will see that in the West, including the USA, the government supports more than 80% of what people do. And we say in Nigeria, government should not do that. Why? I don't understand that at all. I don't. We complain bitterly about alleged over-centralization. In fact, Nigeria is not centralized. In the US, the New York State gets 3/4 of its budget from federal allocations. It may not be the way we do it. Unfortunately, we've got into the assumption that somehow their federalism is better than our own. But that's false. Every federalism is sui generis. So the notion of restructuring is a dangerous diversion. All our elites in the past 20 years have not talked about how to lift us out of poverty. But they want to recreate failed tri-regional system. The regional system created by politicians and colonialists in the 50s failed because they were organized to fail. The house of prisons and of oppression. So we should see what we do, appreciate what we do, and refine what we do. we can't continuously put ourselves in a framework that we really cannot move forward. Thank you.
All protocols observed. Quite honestly, I got in a little bit late, so I didn't follow, or I followed. But I can understand the gist and the drift. And I want to take it from where Prof stopped. And I totally agree with him. And one of the things I noted while I was seated out there, we have not actually looked inward to actually address the problem. Now, one of the things he mentioned was capacity. I don't know whether anybody noticed that. Capacity. It's not there, even in governance. Even from the people that you govern, the capacity is not there. There's no direction. The other time I was asking somebody that how did Dubai manage to build the tallest building in the world? It was an idea of somebody within who imagined that he can build the tallest building in the world. Now, it got to a point it could not continue. What happened? The government set in and completed it on a special arrangement. That is the encouragement that you need from government. Now, I say capacity from the point of view of when any government is formed, what do you have? You just have silos of decision makers. Silos in the sense that the monetary policy man will be doing his own, the capital market man will be in his own, the other people will be doing their own to say, okay, I must excel in one way or the other. And there's no coordinating man or the coordinator factor that will say this is the direction where we're going. And what happens? You have dysfunctionalities in terms of your achievement at the end of the day. So for me, we need to also tell any government that is in place, what do you want to achieve? Who is going to be in charge? Sometimes we hear about they call it somebody that runs the presidential affairs or chief of staff. Now, for me, that should be the work of the chief of staff, who will say, look, this, that is where we're going. So when you bring in your own monetary policy, you make sure that it tidies up with what the demand in the fiscal policy is talking about. You make sure that everything comes together in a sense that you now find out that, look, we are going towards a particular goal. Now, recently, they were doing the trader alert or trader, is it trader alert or trader money? Now, somebody is defending because I took somebody up in the presidency. I said, what do you think you are going to achieve with this? Now, they were able to defend it to a point because it was BOI that was actually disbursing the money. And I said, okay, from there, because he said, once you pay back the 10,000, they will increase it to 15,000. And once you pay back the 15,000, they will pay you 20,000. Now I said, so how? Are you now saying you are multiplying the effect? They say, yes, because these people are illiterate. Now, how do you also now bring them into that bracket of the inclusion that you are trying to also create? They say a lot of them, they don't have, bank accounts. Okay? That by the time they get to 100,000, they will introduce them to banks and all of that, so on and so forth. Fine. Fine by me. But the truth of the matter, like he said also, have we created the environment for the investors who will actually make sure that these people comply and is consistent? Because one of the questions you ask is that, how are these things going to be consistent? Some of the policies, they are fantastic policies, honestly, the Prof. They are. But to also even drive it, to also understand it, is a bit of a challenge, and the capacity is not also there. And what I want us to also discuss here, because I am here to also learn from and I'm happy that I could hear Prof speak this way, because I thought I'm the only odd man out each time I look at the economy, and sometimes I don't even look at what you put there again. I just say these people, they are jokers. But God will help us in Jesus' name. I will stop there for now. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Dr. Abolo is my name. I'm currently the Chief Executive Thinker of the Economic Thinktank Center. I just recently retired from government voluntarily, and so I have to be very careful the way I make my comments. Well, with respect to whether it is inside out or outside in analysis, it is neither here nor there. Although I left the university environment over 20 years ago, but I do know that these analyses are not discrete in approach. They are not discrete, they are continuous, and it's a system approach. And for those who are familiar with the Keynesian model, you find that the external sector is exogenous in that particular definition. It's exogenous. So even those who are familiar with strategy crafting, when you're doing your strategy analysis about SWOT analysis, so when you say you're doing your strength and your weaknesses, which is internal, and then of course your opportunities and threats, there's nothing that suggests that you have to finish one before you go to the other. It's a system approach. I'm saying that because Mudal is not here to defend himself. And he happened to be my classmate, so I have to defend him. So please, apologies for that. Now, when we talk about outlook, the dictionary definition is very clear. Macroeconomic outlook. It says likely future outcome. Likely. What is the likely future outcome for our economy in 2019? And as a businessman, I wanted to see clearly those outlook in order to aid my decisions and my planning for my business. Of course, it did very well in looking at some key indicators. And if you follow through, it was talking about interest rate, inflation, foreign exchange, and all of that. Those are very key indicators. And I want you to see the outlook. Is it the likely outlook? Is it the very likely or the most likely? And that takes us into the realm of scenario analysis. So if I peep through the window here and I'm looking out, what I'm going to see depends on my focus. Depends on what I'm focusing on. So two of us can be looking outside here. We are looking at inflation, looking out, looking at interest rate, and so on. It depends on the focus, and it also depends on the stability of the system. Now, if the camera is not stable, the economy is not stable, what you'll be seeing will be a bit hazy, and it will be changing from one point to the other. It's just more like the balance sheet, which is a look at any point in time. 2 minutes after you look, you are seeing a different thing altogether. So I was interested in trying to see, are these most likely outlook, or very likely, or just likely? I wanted to see that, and of course, I would have loved to see a table where all of these are summarized in terms of what are we actually looking at, what are we seeing in order to aid my planning. But having said that, I want to talk about 5 pillars for this 2019. 5 pillars, very, very briefly. What we need to avoid. One of them will be self-imposed injuries. We are just imposing injuries on ourselves as a country, either through the social media or by individuals. What we say about Nigeria matters, because that will determine whether there will be foreign direct investment into your country or not. And he has clearly stated that investment is very key for this country. So what we say about ourselves is very important. Otherwise, all of these interest rate, exchange rate, and so on will come to naught. So we need to be very careful. That's one pillar. We need to avoid self-imposed injuries and the polarization of the country. Nigeria has never been more polarized than what we have now. And if you have a followership that is so polarized, you're not going to achieve any macroeconomic stability in the country. So that is the first one. We need to avoid self-imposed injuries. Now, when two elephants fight, the grass will normally suffer. It depends on the nature of the fight. In the secondary school, we used to hear that corruption is a canker worm that has eaten deep into the fabric of the nation. It's very theoretical to those who don't know what corruption is all about. If you walk in certain places and somebody says he wants to buy biro for 1 million naira, then you can better appreciate what is meant by corruption. For so many, it is very, very theoretical. You don't really know what corruption is all about. Now, the fight against corruption is so important. I love it. But the approach is very important. We do not want to fight in a disruptive manner. If you fight because an economy is like the body system. If you keep on putting poison into the system and cause a lot of instability to the system, no matter the macroeconomic variables you are going to be fighting, you are not going to be achieving anything. So we need to do things a little bit differently. You know, he mentioned something about financial intermediation. Now, from my little elementary economics, one of the functions of money is that it serves as a store of value. Now, where do you store your money? It's in the banking system. Now, are people now still willing to store their money in the financial system? The answer is no. Except maybe you are from the private sector. Even if you are from the private sector, whatever you are putting in the banking system can be traced by anybody, can be traced with the use of the BVN. Also, every money, wherever they are, whether it's a dollar, whether it's a... And so people are scared, not so. Well, let anyone be scared. The point is the financial system is not able to play its role now because of the approach to the fight of corruption. Because once your money is there, it can easily be traced. So now, if I'm not going to put my money in the bank, money must serve as a store of value. What do? It's either we'll start burying the money in the burial ground, which some people try to do, because money must serve as a store of value. Or you start building houses, go to Abuja, many houses are not occupied. You see birds flying, very beautiful houses. They want to store their money in that form, especially money launderers. The alternative is to start buying dollar at whatever exchange rate. At whatever exchange rate. So that is what happened to the foreign exchange market. It's nothing else. People are now looking for alternatives. So even if the exchange rate is 400 naira, they will be willing to buy it at 400. It doesn't really matter because the money doesn't really belong to them. So the point I'm making is that we need a more preventative approach so that we do not over-destabilize, overheat the system. And there are better approaches. There are good approaches. I'm not saying they are not good. They are not fighting corruption now. The previous administration talked about technology, using technology to fight corruption. But the details can be worked out. Power is power. If we do not fix the power sector, we are wasting our time. All these SME, we want to grow SMEs and so on. Where is the electricity to grow any SME? So power is also a pillar. The other one is insecurity. Whatever is going to happen in 2099 depends on what happens at the level of insecurity. We have read OBJ's, not read. Well, yes, we read OBJ's, one of those letters recently. He talked about ISIS West Africa. Okay, they are going to come. And given the porosity of our borders, we are really going to have strong fight on our hands in 2019. So what we do to deal with, because if there is no security, you cannot be talking about macroeconomic development or even stability.
To this place, we knew the call was going to be full. It's not just being full, it's about the quality of people that are here today. So, shout out to all of you for coming. Thank you very much. Now, what that means is that we are taking a step forward. Because we started this thing not knowing how it was going to go. But we kept hoping that this dialogue that we have created will attract the quality of people that will make sure that those we are trying to speak to, which are those in Abuja, or Alausa, or in Owerri, in different government houses across the country, and also those who are operating in the private sector. So we are moving gradually, and we'll get there. So at some point, I believe that this place will be too small for us to meet, and we'll take it out of this place. But thank you very much for Prof, who came into the country, and then I had to drag him to this place. You will find his views. That was what really attracted me to him. You won't believe this WhatsApp is good, isn't it? We met on WhatsApp. I know Tony Chedina, who works with Dangote, is a friend from time, So I had gone to see him, and he said, "Oh, there's one prof." He said, "Professor Iweriebo, right?
Iweriebo.
That I should try and contact him." So he gave me his number, and then I chatted with him on WhatsApp, and that's how the friendship began. That's great. Now, I have known Dr. Abolo for a long time from the Access Bank, First Bank, and so on. Then he went to Abuja. What I used to say to those who go to, I said, when they go to Abuja, they refuse to come back. I'm happy that he's back. Now, GTI. You will pass this place and then you won't know what was going on until Prof, whom I dragged into when I was editor of Business Day. I dragged him, you have to do a column for me, and then he started doing a column for me at Business Day. So I said, "Oh, let me send him." I think I sent copies to. Yes, you did. And then we came here, and then we met GMD. I said, and then it's ideas that drive this thing that we do. So you speak to somebody and he blows you away with the ideas that he is, So I met him and said, I've been in journalism, in financial journalism for, I don't want to say how long. I don't need to guess my age. And I met him and we were having a discussion, an interview, and I was, how come I didn't meet him? Before we knew it, GTI Business Financial Investment Dialogue was born. So I thank you very much for